Welcome to Chatting with Chuck. I'm your host, Chuck. Today I'm talking to Andrew Lunn, we're going to discuss 4G LTE in industrial applications. So let's jump right into this. Hey, Andrew, for someone who hears 4G or LTE and just thinks of their phone, how would you explain the industrial uses of this technology?
Yeah, sure. That's actually a good. I actually use that analogy doing trainings with folks who are new to the space. Actually, so think about your phone for a second, and your phone has LTE. Usually has a little 4G or LTE icon in the upper right-hand corner, right? And it's got an LTE radio inside. But whereas your phone has things that interfaces, let's say, that are designed to make it useful for a human, right? Like screen, audio port, Bluetooth, buttons on the side and so forth. An LTE and industrial LTE device is going to have interfaces like an Ethernet port, serial port, industrially temperated Wi-Fi. So they're similar. The devices have a kind of a similar base technology, but they're different in the physical aspect. They're also a little bit different in the way that the software is designed to run. So your industrial LTE applications require custom software and Open Linux OS, VPN technology, and things like that. So that's so like I said, they're similar, but the differences come in some of the requirements for security and reliability that are required for industrial applications.
But isn't Wi-Fi or even Ethernet connection pretty much available everywhere?
Yeah, that's actually another good question. So here's the thing. For a person, it's really easy for us to think that internet is available everywhere. A lot of us kind of travel for different things, and it seems like, gosh, whether you're in a taxi or the airport terminal or the hotel room or whatever, there's Wi-Fi everywhere, right? And even if you're on a factory floor, let's say, or distribution facility or what have you, there's oftentimes a local Wi-Fi network. But the challenge is it kind of twofold. One, if you're evaluating, let's say you're evaluating a wireless solution, or not even wireless, but just to say a remote monitoring solution. Say you have a big expensive piece of equipment on a third-party site that you need to talk to, right? You want to send data to Amazon Cloud, or you want to talk to it through your SCADA application or whatever. Just because there's Wi-Fi there or Ethernet there, one, it doesn't mean that you get to use it, because there are companies who are very, very increasingly security conscious. You'll remember that a Target breach years ago that was basically kind of can be traced back to letting other third parties in this case, it was an HVAC contractor, I believe, onto Target's network.
Right.
So I actually use that example because I hear it pretty often that we can't get on our customer's network because they're skittish about that. And then the other challenge that comes with using the whatever internet access you happen to find on a site is that it's not necessarily reliable. In other words, it's controlled by someone else. So you go to the factory floor at Acme Company, let's say, right? And Acme Company has a guest Wi-Fi network. Well, that's great, but that password is going to change, and you're not going to know about it. And if you're connected on that, the same goes for that airport example, right? So it's yes, Wi-Fi is increasingly available, but it's increasingly available to people who are who are either part of part of an office or warehouse or facility, and they have the security credentials, or they're available to people who are let's say visiting, but it's not really designed for long-term, consistent, secure, reliable remote monitoring access.
Well, Andrew, if I think of cellular data, for example, isn't it expensive and kind of unreliable?
Well, I guess I would kind of say no to both points. I mean, it's funny. I think about way back in the day when you used to pay per minute, and you used to like kind of tell people, "Hey, call me in the
Right.
evening when I have my free minutes," right? Or you'd pay per
Yeah.
text message or something like that. We're kind of at a point now where we have a similar dynamic with cellular data. So carriers will call these like M2M data plans or IoT, I guess, in some cases, but they're really quite affordable and they're pooled. So you know how you have a family plan for your kids' cell phones, your spouse's cell phone, let's say. You can put machines basically on it, or you can put your machines, but first, SIMs that are inserted into LTE devices and connected to controllers or whatever. You can have those devices on basically a family plan for machines, for lack of a better way to put it. They call them the carriers call them like pooled plans. So there's that dynamic that lets you share across different devices. But there's also you can Google Verizon M2M data plans, and you'll see they publish this pricing. It's very cheap, frankly, and there's actually now a new tier of plans for really low data low data devices, not very talkative devices. Let's say LTE category M or LTE category 1 that are really, really inexpensive. So not necessarily on the expensive part. And then on the reliability question, here's the thing. I bet you that in the last week or 2 weeks, let's say, you were buying something with your credit card, and the cashier said, "Oh, sorry, our machines are really slow today." Or you, we just have to have cash today. Our machines aren't working, or something like that, right? So I think that we have the reality that we're so used to always on internet connectivity that we know that it's not always the case. But with these LTE devices, we've specifically designed them to have redundancy capabilities built in, right? So take the B&B SmartWorks Smart Start and Smart Flex devices. They have dual SIM slots. Here's an example. So they have dual SIM slots. So you could have an AT&T and a Verizon SIM card in each one. So like imagine if you had your phone and you were in an area that you normally have Verizon and you're in an area that doesn't have good Verizon coverage. Imagine if your phone could just switch over to AT&T. Right? That's the kind of capability that the devices have. So I would say if your phone could do that, you would probably feel pretty good about always having coverage, right? And so that's kind of what we're working with.
Well, you mentioned SIM cards. So, if I put a SIM card in a remote device, doesn't that create security risk?
It certainly could. And this is something that we talk with customers about. I mean, there's a couple of things to think about. First is not all SIM cards are built the same or set up the same way, let's say. So the SIM card in your phone, you probably, and not knowing everything about the phone, but you could probably take that and put it in a device, and it might be able to connect out to the internet. Well, that's fine, but I don't know that necessarily creates a security risk. I guess I'm not necessarily a security expert, but I'm not quite sure how that would give a bad guy, let's say, access to a proprietary part of your network. The other thing is that some SIM cards, and in fact, this is increasingly common, is that many M2M applications use what the carriers have marketed as private APNs. In other words, it's almost like the carrier says, "Hey, we'll give you a little part of our network, and you can transmit data to and from your application, and it won't touch the internet." Okay. Now we can debate what they mean by the internet and all that stuff, but the point is that the SIM cards themselves can be set up in a really secure way. And the other thing is, maintaining just basic security policy about passwords and about VPN, passwords, credentials, user rights, network segmentation. These devices are built to support all those basic security requirements. So, if you put this in the back of your, fast food store, somebody pop it out and use it on their phone to look at Netflix? Maybe. We just don't see that. That has not been any kind of has not had any kind of hampering effect on the growth of this technology, though.
Well, I hear, and we all hear that 2G networks are kind of going away. But what about 3G? Is it going away?
Yeah, it is. 2G is pretty much gone. On 3G, here's an interesting thing. So we make these devices, and we have. We certify them on carriers, and so we get some insight on a little bit of a kind of inside scoop on what's happening. And I'll tell you that I want to say Verizon stopped certifying 3G only devices. In other words, devices that were just 3G devices. I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, at least 2 years ago. So you couldn't even certify a device like that. Now they have come out now and published, and I suppose this is Googleable too. And I should have it. Well, I know at least this much. So it's either Verizon or AT&T. I might get this mixed up, but the point is this: by the end of June, one of those companies is not going to activate any new 3G devices, and then by the end of the year, they won't be that network will be turning down entirely, that 3G network. Now, I think it's AT&T that was going to keep 3G around until the end of next year, 2019.
Okay.
But that's, yeah, so to answer your question in a more brief way, yeah, the 3G is going away in the U.S.
Yeah, and I figured it probably was. Technology moves on, but yeah, I'm just curious what you think. The long-term view of this, even maybe 5 years from now, or what do you see possibly coming?
Sure. Well, LTE stands for long-term evolution, right? So there's a standards body called 3GPP. They're the group that's kind of defined the different iterations of 2G, 3G, 4G, and so LTE isn't going away. I guess maybe going back to the example I just shared about networks shutting down. I believe it's Verizon that has said that they're keeping their 4G LTE around until 2027 at least. So that's at least a 9-year view, let's say, on that. Probably more relevant to industrial applications, though. You're going to see, B&B SmartWorks, this group within Advantix, come out with an LTE Category 1 devices. So I kind of alluded to this earlier. There are different versions of LTE that are suited to high-speed data, downloading movies and live streaming. That's like LTE Category 6, 9, 12, and so forth. Then there are some that are on the other end of the spectrum, LTE Category 1 being one of them. That's lower speed, lower power. LTE Category M for machine-type communication, even lower power, better building penetration. So that's stuff that's coming to the market now, especially with LTE Category M, and the analyst estimates show that as kind of the prevailing technology for machine type communication for the next 2-3 years at least.
Andrew, I do appreciate you taking the time to take a few minutes to discuss this 4G LTE and industrial applications and so much more. This has been Chuck with Chatting with Chuck. Please stay tuned. Further episodes are coming.